Alright, so around a week ago, my good old buddy old pal Ujik asked me if I'd be down to record us playing Google translated Celeste for a Dun and Ujik video. Now, prior to that recording session, I had absolutely no interest in Celeste. I had heard of it before, but never really gone out of my way to learn more about it or try it for myself. So, naturally, I bought the game after watching Ujik play through it because it looked really fun and it just so happened to be on sale for $4. And now that a couple days have passed since I beat the game, let's talk about it. The prologue is not really much of anything. It's just meant to introduce you to all the platforming elements as well as a few of the characters. Madeline is our protagonist. Her name changes depending on what you name your file, but I chose to leave it as is and I'd urge you do the same if you play the game for yourself. We'll find out more about her as we go, but for now all we know is that she wants to climb Celeste Mountain. Forsaken City, or Chapter 1, has two things that I would like to talk about. First of all, we get introduced to one of the most important characters in the game here, which is Theo. He's as stereotypical for a millennial as you can possibly get. He'll become more important later, but for now let's focus on the other thing I wanted to talk about with this chapter. I absolutely love the way this game makes really easy obstacles look really daunting. This is something that persists throughout the entire game. Just watching it gives off the illusion that it must be really difficult, like Kaizo Mario difficulty near the end. Now, it's actually surprisingly easy. Granted, I did only do the main story. I'll try to 100% it someday, but for the purposes of this video, the 105 strawberries I got is good enough. So there might be some super difficult stuff for 100%, but the main story is really not too challenging. That's it for Chapter 1. Upon reaching the end of the Forsaken City, Madeline goes to sleep, and thus we begin our first dream sequence. Old Sight, or Chapter 2, might genuinely be my favorite part of the entire game. There's some close competition from later parts, but man, this chapter is wonderful. It's here we get introduced to evil Madeline, or as I've learned the community calls her, Badeline. She breaks out of a mirror and is the main antagonist of this game. Truth be told, she's not really a true antagonist as much as she is a representation of Madeline's inner conflict, but she acts like an antagonist regardless, so I'll consider her one for the purposes of this video. There's one really raw line in here, and it's "You are not a mountain climber." This doesn't seem too significant right now, mostly because we don't really know who exactly Badeline is, but in a couple chapters we'll see exactly how important this line is to Madeline's character arc. The other interesting story bit here is Madeline talking to a person whose identity I still don't know on the phone right before waking up. When going to the same phone after she wakes up, Madeline talks to her mom on the phone, and she looks completely different from the person that she talks to in her dream, so I don't know who exactly this is. Outside of the story though, what I think truly makes this chapter work so well is how perfectly its gimmick works with the dream components. The transparent fluid block things are probably my favorite of the chapter gimmicks just because they're so fun to navigate. There's another chapter later with amazing story moments, but which unfortunately drops the ball in the gameplay, but that's really for later. The Celestial Resort, or Chapter 3, is probably the most isolated chapter of the entire game. To continue through the mountain, Madeline has to make it through the resort run by Mr. Oshiro, who's trying really hard to get her to stay at the hotel. The almost gloam-like things that make up most of the obstacles in this chapter are really well utilized, and it makes for some of the toughest platforming in the main story, but also some of the best. The entire cleaning section here in general is one of my favorite gameplay segments in the entire thing. It's really enjoyable. Anyway, this chapter's mostly platforming. Badeline upsets the hotel owner after we finish cleaning. We get the chase sequence, and that's pretty much the entire chapter. I know I barely talked about it, but this is one of the longest chapters in the entire game. It's just that a vast majority of it is platforming, with dialogue that doesn't really advance the main story. Moving on, Golden Ridge, or Chapter 4, is my least favorite in the game, and it's purely because of its gimmick. The wind is easily my least favorite of this game's mechanics, and it's also the only one that actively harms its chapter. I'm sorry, but the only time I ever passed a room and thought to myself, thank God I don't have to do that again, was in rooms with wind, which only appear here and in the final chapter. While Chapter 2 remains my favorite chapter in the game, the gondola scene in Chapter 4 is my favorite section of the entire game. Everything about this scene is just wonderful. It perfectly illustrates Theo's character while also giving us more insight into Madeline's at the same time, and on top of that, it's the base where will become a main gameplay mechanic later with the feather. It's genuinely fantastic. The Mirror Temple, or Chapter 5, is where we truly explore this game's emotional core and Madeline as a character in general. The entire gimmick of the Mirror Temple is that it's built around the worst side of whoever is in there. It's really interesting. There is one issue I have with this place though, and it's that it's really easy to get lost in here. It's the only time in the main story I just didn't know where to go, which was fine until I got to the part where all the strawberries that were stirring about were collected and I had to advance the main story instead of meandering, and I had no idea where progression was. That said, there are some really cool moments in here, like the part where you play as that monster thing, as well as just the entire crystal part. It's one of the hardest set of rooms in the game, and that's really good. The combination of the monster things while having to carry Theo across makes for a really interesting section that's definitely the highlight of the chapter. It's not as good as Chapter 6 though. Reflection is fighting with Chapter 2 for the best in the game, and it's actually pretty damn close. We start with a really wholesome dialogue sequence between Madeline and Theo, only for Madeline to fall down the mountain 5 minutes later. A bunch of platforming later with some Kevin blocks. In a conversation with the old lady, we find this chapter's equivalent to You Are Not a Mountain Climber. The old lady tells Madeline that she actually thought she might climb the mountain because I've never met someone so angry at themselves. Let that sink in for a bit. Okay, boss fight time. The fight with Madeline is insanely carried by its music. I haven't talked about the music yet because I've yet to find a good place to do so, so let's do that now. This game's soundtrack is amazing. It's not the type of soundtrack you listen to by itself, but it adds a lot to the game's most powerful moments. It's also another reason I really like Chapter 2 and Oshiro's cleaning section so much. They have some of the best tracks in the game. The way the music distorts as you progress in this fight is really well done and just makes it feel really cool. After beating Madeline, it's time for the final platforming gauntlet. Hot take incoming, the Summit, or Chapter 7, is one of this game's weaker chapters. This is the one other point besides Golden Ridge where I found some rooms to be genuinely annoying, most notably the final room of the Celestial Resort part, as well as the entire Golden Ridge section. The ending very much makes up for it though, and that's really the game. Celeste is the first game I've played in quite a while where I genuinely found it difficult to pick out the negatives. Even though I'm not the target audience for a story like this and don't relate to Madeline much at all, I still found the game's story really well executed, and outside of some rooms in Golden Ridge and the Summit, Celeste's main story truly does not have any bad parts to it, and I'm extremely happy I decided to check it out. I definitely recommend it if you enjoy platformers, and even more if you resonate with Madeline's character. 9 out of 10 would gladly die in the old lady's driveway again. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.